But let's talk specifically about a couple of things that brought this to a head. The first is cell phones. And I think as Secretary Matt Dunlap was indicating earlier, there's some studies which suggest that talking on a cell phone distracts you to the same equivalent that being a .08 does in terms of being an impaired driver. We have as a society have said, you know what, you can't drive while you're under the influence. We just won't accept it. But here's an activity that has been shown by studies to be just about equal to that in terms of the potential for causing accidents. Why aren't we outlawing the use of cell phones, either using them or hands-free? Why aren't we doing that? Tim?
Because everybody has one. Everybody uses one. They're so popular. You know, that's why, and to limit it is going to be tough.
Not everybody has a six-pack.
Right.
All right. Okay, but Lieutenant, and it's Brian Scott.
Yes, sir.
I got your name wrong.
You know, AAA's done some studies, and they've estimated about 100 million American drivers use their cell phones while they're driving. Now, cell phone seems to be a hot topic, and you are about 4 times, statistically speaking, 4 times more likely to be involved in an accident if you're using a cell phone talking. Now, if you're texting, the studies show you're 23 times more likely to be involved in an accident.
We'll come back to texting in a minute.
Okay. Now, so there are several states that have enacted laws saying that you have to have handheld or hand-free device instead of handheld electronic communication devices. But the fallacy, or I should say the flaw with that, is that the cognitive function of driving is still impaired. So the statistics are showing that just banning the handheld use is not reducing the number of accidents as a result of cell phone use.
Right. Hands-free is just as dangerous as holding up to the ear. You know, I read those studies too, and it just didn't seem right to me intuitively. I mean, Jake, what do you think? Do you think, from your perspective, that talking on the phone like this is no more dangerous than using a hands-free? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, as far as kind of the teens go, I think it's more of cell phone use is more of the constant need to be in contact with people as far as our generation's concerned, whether it be talking with a girlfriend or boyfriend, other friends on your way to going to the bowling alley or whatever it is. It's more of that constant need, oh, I have to talk to this person, I have to talk to this person. So whether or not it's necessary at that particular moment in time is also one of the main things. As far as it being hands-free or not, I think one of the major arguments for teens is because it's so second nature and technology kind of being this generation's baby, so to speak, I can talk to somebody on the phone, dial a number just as easy as I can turning the radio or other distractions that may occur. So I think it's kind of across the board as far as whether or not it's hands-free, it makes a difference or not.
Matt, the legislature has considered bills specifically to outlaw the use of cell phones, period. I don't think any state in the country does that. Some outlaw having a handheld. But in light of the statistics we've just been hearing about, it's been rejected every year. It just doesn't have any legs in the legislature. Why is that?
I think legislators depend on them too. You know, I've had members of leadership tell me, it's like, geez, you know, I drive 3 hours a day, and if I didn't have my setup, I couldn't get my work done. And you know, I use my cell phone quite a bit too. I think there is a marked difference in the level of activity. And of course, probably gets back to the broad, nebulous nature of this bill, because there are some things that are distracting that are less distracting than other things. You know, obviously, adjusting your mirror can be a distraction, but focusing your attention on text messaging is something that we are seeing more and more of, contributing to the intensity and frequency of car crashes. And so I think as the evolution of this law moves forward, you're going to see probably some revisitation to around the specific activities that contribute to the frequency of crashes.
Tim, do you believe that those studies that say, look, it's just as dangerous to be on a hands-free phone as it is to be using one up to
your thinking, your thoughts aren't about driving, your thoughts are on the conversation. How many times have you been on a conversation and driven by the road that you want to take? And you go, oh, I missed that.
But you know, the parallels to OUI are really good ones here too, because not only is it issues of distraction, but also the evolution of OUI law over the many, many years. And for many years, the states really didn't do a whole lot with that, and it wasn't until really the past 20 or 30 years where you saw states finally doing something about that. It was actually a federal response where they said, you know, unless you're going to have statutes that establish these minimums, not just 0.15 like back in many years ago, unless you're going to have certain relatively low levels of blood alcohol content, for OUI purposes, we're not going to give you federal highway funds. And it was many, many years, decades before people realized, you know, this is a significant problem. So maybe the fact that the cell phones haven't been banned yet is a measure of just, it's only been a decade. And OUI was a problem for 80 years before they really finally dealt with it and passed some laws about it.
And as our Secretary of State pointed out, I mean, one of the responses you just gave, which I think is absolutely correct, is one of the reasons we're not regulating it or disallowing it is because everybody does it. And 50 years ago, that's how we felt about drunk driving.
You're right.
That's a really great point. You know, the whole issue around operating under the influence, you know, drunk driving crashes that led to fatalities were sort of a rite of passage for Jake's age group when we were young. You know, there were funerals every year because, you know, there's a high school graduation party, someone had too much to drink and died in a crash. It didn't even make the front page. Very much like when I was in the legislature and I chaired the Fish and Wildlife Committee 50 years ago, hunting incidents didn't make the front page either. But because of the intense effort by citizen activists and the legislature to get their hands around that, changing some of the terminology, like we stopped calling them hunting accidents. You know, we stopped calling these car accidents. Accidents are what happen when a young child is learning how to use the bathroom. You know, this, when you're taking a 2,000-pound, very expensive investment and smashing it into a tree, that's a crash. And when people die, that's avoidable. Basically, what we have found was we have the laws in the books right now, the engineering in place. There's no reason why a skilled driver has any reason to get into a crash. So we're seeing the evolution of the technology. I think the statutes are being modified to address some of those new distractions around cell phone use, communications devices, other things that contribute to crashes. Because what we really want to see is an end to the day when state police have to spend their time going to people's homes to inform people of the death of a loved one, which is probably their least favorite duty, I would imagine. It certainly is one of mine. So that's what the goal is. What we're really trying to get to here is what are the elements that contribute to crashes. We know that drunk driving contributed to a lot of crashes and still does. This new technology is also beginning to have an impact that's starting to offset our earlier work on OUI.